Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Jen. And today we're doing a common health concerns episode on rotator cuff injuries without surgery.
That is true. So I have some personal experience with this. I went 3 weeks on vacation and didn't do push-ups, didn't do all the stuff I normally do, just was burnt out and just stopped everything. And I came back to practice and I started adjusting. I'm a pretty deep adjuster. I can pretty much throw around a 6'8", 350-pound guy and not have an issue with it. So I went back to adjusting, and my shoulders get a little bit sore because of how deep I adjust, and usually take Ligaplex. From standard process, I usually take Ligaplex 1 at night just because I want to keep those ligaments healthy and not have any damage. And so I started taking that again, and it didn't seem to be doing what it normally does for me. And I thought, well, it's just I'm really working myself hard, so I'll just give it a little bit of time. But I kept adjusting. So 4 weeks into this, all of a sudden it just started getting worse and worse and worse over the weekend, actually. And by Monday I was hurting pretty bad, and Tuesday I couldn't even lift my shoulder. So I had to cancel patients. And after almost 25 years in practice and giving birth to 4 children at home, I've missed a total of 5 days of work basically over the last 25 years. So I had to cancel some of my patients, but I had some other patients coming in from Texas and driving in from Nashville. And I didn't want to disappoint them. They were already on their way. So I'm like, I'll suck it up. I'll be okay. And I'll go in. So I did. And I was very mindful, but I was past the point, I think. So anyway, when I got to the last patient, it basically just gave way on me. And I've never experienced that type of pain in my life. People are, I've had rotator cuff tears, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like a guy. If I don't experience that, I have not as much empathy as I should, or sympathy, right? Because at that point, I can't have empathy. Now I have empathy. So sympathy. I had no idea how painful this could be. It was atrocious. I mean, I literally gave birth to 4 children at home, and not small ones, and one with a compound presentation. And I didn't even take so much as an Advil or anything. So this threw me. This was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. So if somebody you know and love has this, dig deep to find some grace, because it's intense. So what the rotator cuff is it's basically composed of 4 muscles: the supraspinatus, which is above the shoulder blade, and it helps to basically raise the arm out; the infraspinatus, which is below the shoulder blade, and it helps to rotate that arm; the teres minor, which is also below the shoulder blade, and it basically causes you to rotate that arm out as well; and then the subscapularis, which is found in the front of the shoulder blade, and it internally rotates that arm, obviously, inward. They work together to stabilize the shoulder. Well, I mean, my arm's basically hanging there, and it was unbelievable. Not only that, but the pain, it would sear. One little wrong movement would sear and take me from a 7 to, I know the scale is 0 to 10, but it would take me to an 11. Like, I sobbed without any sound coming out of my mouth because it was just so excruciating. I know quite a bit about rotator cuff injuries and stuff like that, but I will tell you now, I know more than I ever thought I ever would. So only 20% of rotator cuff tears require surgery. So I thought that was very interesting. I would like to stay out of a surgery center at all costs, if possible. So there's a whole host of options we have, and I'm going to go through the stuff that I did, some of the stuff I didn't do that are also options. One thing I did not do was PRP. So for people who don't know what that is, it's called platelet-rich plasma. And basically it is using your own blood to promote healing in the injured tissue. So they'll inject that into the muscles, the joints, the tendons, and they basically take apart the portion of your blood and inject the platelets back into your body to help reduce pain and inflammation, improve mobility, and speed up recovery. I'm not a huge fan of injections. So I thought if I need to do this later, I know that's an option and I can absolutely go into it, and it can be expensive. So that is an option for people who are not sure what to do. I did do peptides. There's a lot of talk right now around peptides. I did a BPC 157, and they do promote cellular regeneration. They reduce inflammation. They increase blood flow. And what's really, really interesting about this is I actually used a brand, it's a liposomal BPC 157 from Quicksilver Scientific. So it is something you pump into your mouth and you swish it around and it gets absorbed through the mucous membrane. Some of it does go into the GI tract, but because it's liposomal, it's highly, highly, highly absorbable. And for a lot of joint injuries, this one's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's worth every penny because it actually works. The problem with a lot of the peptides, especially the stuff that's on the market, you go to Amazon, you find a $35 bottle of these peptide capsules, and they are not broken down as well by the gut because of the gut health for most people. And because the peptide size tends to be too big, really, so they're not being absorbed or transported like they should be. So that's why I like the Quicksilver Scientific. And I can tell you, I noticed a difference with adding that in because I didn't do that initially. I noticed a difference within 3 days, a significant difference.
Wow.
So I have another patient in Florida, and she's had this shoulder injury for quite some time. And I told her to get it, and she said, holy cow, I cannot believe, this is the first improvement I've seen since it got kind of plateaued 2 years ago.
Wow.
So she's seeing a huge difference with that too. The other thing that I've done, obviously chiropractic, because of those muscles pulling, and you have a ton of muscles in your back, I was having ribs pop away from my spine, so I was having the ribs adjusted back in toward the spine, which made a gigantic difference. Now, it helped stabilize things, but it did increase the inflammation, so I was in more pain after the adjustments initially, but I knew that it was doing me some good because my shoulder felt less gristly. I don't know how else to describe it, but it felt much, much better. So I definitely got adjusted, not right away. I probably waited a week and then started that and tried to do that every other day, at least to try to see what we could get done. Getting my neck adjusted, getting the upper ribs adjusted up in the trap area made a huge difference. And then I also had dry needling done. And if you're not familiar with that, there's more information on our website, or you can look that up online. So I was doing dry needling, chiropractic. I went to my acupuncturist, and she was doing, or still is really, doing acupuncture with stim. So they're attaching electrodes to those acupuncture needles, which I found made a huge difference too, which was super, super helpful. Like I said, I was doing massage. I did some fascia blasting, Saluma, which is red light therapy, blue light therapy, and near infrared. So I was doing that 4 times a day. So there's some of these red light therapy things that are on Amazon for $20. I'm like, yeah, no. I'm all about there's things that you can find that are cheap that you don't have to overspend, but there's certain things you absolutely need to spend the money on. So Saluma, I have used the Salumas for, like I said, 20 years. So I was doing that 3 to 4 times a day on the aches and pains setting. And I could definitely see a difference that there was spasming in my bicep. That was because it was overcompensating for the other weak muscles. So it wasn't just that, it was having nerve pain all the way down my bicep, into my forearm, and into my hands. And when I would do the heat, it would calm everything down, and the nerve pain would slow down a little bit so I could catch my breath. So I was doing that. I've done more sitting in 5 weeks than I've done in probably 10 years. So that's been torturous of itself. But the Saluma has made a huge, huge difference. So just doing all of that, PEMF mats, I'm sure there's something I'm honestly forgetting, tons of supplements, ligament supplements, Ligaplex 1, Ligaplex 2, vitamin D, tons of calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, you name it, I'm doing it. So it's been pretty amazing. And I'm 5 weeks out, and I feel like I'm about 80 to 85% healed from what's going on.
That's incredible.
So, yeah. So you can absolutely do it. The key is to hit it hard, hit it fast. Don't let the scar tissue start healing it improperly. You know what I mean? Because as it's healing improperly, you're going to get some scar tissue. But the one thing I noticed too is this was the catch-22, Amy, was that I started to get frozen shoulder. So there was some other damage going on in there as well. So the problem is that what you would do with frozen shoulder is the exact opposite of what you would do for a torn rotator cuff. You're supposed to kind of stabilize it, immobilize it. And I was like, the more I did that, the worse everything was getting. And so I have had patients with frozen shoulder, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So I went ahead and was trying to manage both of those simultaneously because I was like, this is not going to freeze up on me.
Yeah.
So that was part of the reason I was doing the adjustments, the needling, the acupuncture, all that kind of stuff. But no, there is absolutely a way to heal from this because, people were like, why don't you go get surgery? And I was like, because it creates more scar tissue, and then that scar tissue has less vascularity. So now you have less blood flow going to that area, which will leave you at risk for future injuries as well.
First and foremost, I'm just so relieved you're doing better. I know you were in a tremendous amount of pain. And I think it's remarkable without surgery to be at 85% 5 weeks later. I just think that's incredible. And it just speaks to there's another way to do this that's not surgery and it actually works. And you're, walking proof of that. Hearing that only 20% of them require surgery is very surprising. I think people are going to be shocked by that statistic. Because anytime you hear that someone tore their rotator cuff, you always hear that they have a surgery date on the calendar as well. And it's because that's what's being recommended by the medical professional. So what would you recommend for people who have a rotator cuff tear, whether it's going to need surgery or not? What's the best way to kind of determine that? Can they take the holistic path, or are they in that 20% for surgery?
Well, obviously all of us want to get back to work because we all love to work. So everyone wants things done yesterday. So will you heal faster with that? Maybe, maybe not. The surgeries also can damage nerves that weren't previously damaged. You don't think about some of the side effects of what was going on. I also did ice, not in the form of ice, but I had a cold pack that was like this. It's like this latex. I don't know how to describe it. It's super heavy. And I wrapped it around the shoulder and I was like, oh my gosh, that gave me so much relief and some analgesic aspect of it as far as pain killing goes, and decrease the inflammation. So that was it. It was like I had to go from heat to cold because the heat would kind of light up other things, but it would calm down the muscles, but then the nerves were ticked off. So it just kind of went back and forth. And I didn't mention PT in here. PT obviously can be a great aspect to it, but I don't necessarily need to go to a PT for this. I know the exercises too. The average person may not know the exercises. You can look stuff up online now. Can you do some of them at home? Yes. Do you want someone else to do the exercises with you and coach you through it? That's great. They can do ultrasound, which I also did a therapeutic ultrasound, not diagnostic, as far as that goes. So I did that instead of the soft wave therapy. Soft wave therapy, the difference kind of between it, from my understanding, is that it's acoustic, which is fine, but it creates more inflammation so that the body will try to heal it. Well, in my case, there's so much inflammation already. There was no way that I could handle more inflammation. This was beyond anything I'd ever experienced in my life. And I was sleeping in a recliner. It took me 3 weeks to be able to sleep in bed, and just moving would just set me through the roof. I was doing arnica, I was doing peppermint oil, turmeric. I wasn't stopping there, but the pain was making me go out of my mind. It gave me a new appreciation for people with chronic nerve pain. And I was not a pleasant person. I was not a patient person. I don't have a lot of that going on to begin with, but this was out the window, it was horrible. It was literally the worst thing has ever happened to me. And life is tough for everybody, but literally it was the most painful, miserable. It took my personality down to all the ugly. It was not great. So I wouldn't wish me on anybody at that point.
Well, your husband survived.
I think so, hopefully. But I did ultrasound. So the ultrasound is not exactly the same as soft wave therapy, but it does use ultrasound waves to induce healing, but it doesn't increase the inflammation. So I've used ultrasound in my practice for 25 years. And like I said, it's not diagnostic ultrasound, it's therapeutic. Torn muscles, we ultrasound it and it helps heal it 10 times faster, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm doing all of that. I did exercises to drop the shoulder a little bit and keep it moving and stuff. So a lot of those. So I would say PT can be great for people. Depends on if your insurance is going to pay for it or not. There's things that you can do that might be a little bit cheaper, And you can go online and look at all those exercises and find things that you can do. But I'm telling you, the adjusting, the red light therapy was huge, huge, huge for that.
Acupuncture.
And the acupuncture with the stem. But you got to find the right acupuncturist. I mean, I have literally one of the best in the entire world. So that makes a huge difference. Just having a good support team and keeping up on it. You can't do something once a week and think it's going to be healthy. Like I was doing stuff 3 to 4 times a day. And I was doing chiropractic every other day. I was doing acupuncture. She's pregnant right now, so I could only go in once a week because of her schedule, which is fine. I mean, I'm going to take what I can get, and I was doing all the other things as well. So it makes a huge difference.
So what makes up the 20% of people who have to have surgery?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the MRI shows, right? So if it's a full tear, that muscle is not going to necessarily repair itself and find the edges and go back together. But I mean, that's going to be in an extreme situation, like a major, major injury, like you fell off a 3-story building or something. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be, and not necessarily that you could trip and fall and it could do that as well. But what I'm saying is, it's also based upon what the health was prior to. And that's what happens with every injury, right? If you're like your husband works out all the time. Yeah. So his muscles are super healthy. His tendons, he takes the supplements. It's not just because he works out.
Right.
His food choices are impeccable. I mean, the guy is a machine. He's not human at all. So
basically no.
Yeah. So like if he injures himself, he has a way greater risk of being able to have his body repaired because he's doing all those right things. If he was eating Doritos and drinking soda and not exercising, and I mean you can't even imagine him doing that, right?
I really can't.
No, I can't either. But what I'm saying is like if you were doing all of those things to your body, like yeah, you're going to have a greater injury because you didn't go into it healthy. So how are you going to repair something if you continue to eat like that? If you continue to behave like that, you can't give it the nutrition that it needs to heal. And my diet is pretty clean. I mean, it's not Pete's, I'll give you that, but it's, but it's pretty clean. And so, and what I do and the movement and the exercise and the strength that I have in my upper body and, makes a huge, huge difference. So of course I was going to have a chance to heal better. And I said, I'll give myself, 3 to 5 weeks. And then, if I need to reevaluate at that time, then we'll go ahead and do that. But at this point, I'm about 85% with my range of motion. The pain is at about a 1, which for my age, that's about where we all live anyway. So, and there is, some weakness still, and I forget because I haven't done much of anything. So the other day I went to go paint something because I started the project before I hurt myself and it's been sitting there for 5 weeks driving me crazy. So I went to paint and I thought, well, I'm right-handed. It's my left shoulder. I'll just be mindful. And I went and I tried to pick up a paint can with my left arm, forgetting because I just got so into it. And I was like, oh, so, I know that there's still an issue there. So.
And remind me again, what was the liposomal stuff you took that you said was so transformative?
The liposomal BPC 157 from Quicksilver Scientific. It has to remain refrigerated. I'm only doing 3 to 4 pumps twice a day, but I'll tell you what else. I noticed a gigantic, literally jump when I started taking that. And, I've given it to patients before, but I really haven't needed it for myself or anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm blown away, absolutely blown away. And it's not one more pill either, which is nice. So it's just a liposomal. It's like an oil type pump that you pump a couple pumps in your mouth and swish it around for 30 seconds and swallow. So. And
just normal people can get that? You don't have to be a doctor?
Yeah, no. Yeah, you can order it.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes because that's, I think that alone would be tremendously helpful for people. But obviously,
one bottle of it will save you a visit to anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, that's how I look at everything. Like, okay, how much is it going to cost me? Where do I want to spend my money? And so I try to do things as frugally, but as great as I could. I'm not going to cheap out on it to where I'm going to have detrimental issues. But at the end of the day, I'm also not going to waste my money when it's something that I could do on my own.
And as healthy as Pete is, I'm going to tuck this away in my memory and be mindful of that because if he were to hurt himself, I want to be able to have him take that. So I will remember that, and I'll definitely put the link in the show notes too for our viewers. So, well, thank you, Dr. Jen. I think I speak on behalf of our entire audience when I say we are so happy that you're doing much better and feeling much better.
You and me both.
I know. I was talking to you in those first days when it happened, and I thought, oh man, she is really suffering. Like, this is bad. So yeah, I'm glad you're feeling better. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you haven't joined our school community before, we'll put the link in the show notes below. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.